Coming up on This Week in Space, we're all safe from that threatening asteroid. Also, Katy Perry's going to space. And what's Buzz Aldrin like behind the scenes? It's your listener questions for our epic episode 150. Tune in.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is This Week in Space, episode number 150, recorded on February 28th, 2025. Our listener special. Hello and welcome to another episode of This Week in Space, the listener special edition. I'm Rod Pyle, editor-in-chief at Astro Magazine, and I'm joined by that Dapper Dan counterpart of mine, Tarek Malik, editor-in-chief at the great and wondrous space.com. How are you, partner?
Dapper Dan, I'm doing well. I could use some Dapper Dan in my hair, you know, get some pomade in there, get my curl going. Be great.
Well, I wasn't going to say anything, but yeah.
Whoa.
Actually, when you came on this morning, my time, it encouraged me to go brush my hair, but it didn't help any because I have less of it every week. See, I can sell ads right here.
I did shave for you and all of those This Week in Space listeners out there today. So,
hold on. I feel so special. And I want to welcome our new TD, John Ashley. John, was this assignment promotion or punishment for you?
Depends on how you want to view things.
Well, actually, it depends on how you want to view things, but yeah.
I'm going to plead the fifth on this one.
Okay, well, that's encouraging. I feel like I'm in the federal government now. Before we start, please don't forget to do us a solid and make sure to like, subscribe, and do the other podcast things that keep us fat, happy, and on the air, although we'd probably be fat anyway. All right. Shall we do jokes first or headlines first? What do you think, Tarek?
Well, we usually always start with a joke, so let's do the joke.
Okay, well, we have a joke melange
I could use one today.
Yeah, and we always introduce our jokes like this.
Wait, do we always?
Before I forget, I have a visual joke for people who are watching. I just got this off Temu. Let's see if I can. It's my new. Oh, too green.
It's like, is it green? Is that what it is?
It's a green rocket.
Oh my gosh, it's a lighter. Watch out for that.
Watch this. It keeps going even when you take your hand off the switch.
Oh, wow.
So if you forget to turn it off, it just
don't
leaks
hurt
out,
yourself,
right?
please. Please don't hurt yourself right now.
Hey, it's not shutting
Don't burn
off.
your eye out, kid. Wow.
Okay. Well, anyway, for those listening, that was a trivial moment of stupid.
John, we have 911 on speed dial, right? For Rod, is that?
I have to check I have to check the budget on that.
Actually, I have a live channel them all the time because of past activities. All right, Tucker Drake.
Tucker,
a joke. Actually, it's not a joke. It's a punchline. This is for you, Tarek.
Okay.
When the moon's in your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amare.
Amare. Wow, I'm not going to live down this whole mare thing, am I?
I guess not.
Thanks,
okay,
Tucker.
We got another one from Bill Nelson. I don't think it's that Bill Nelson, but
the Bill Nelson, former NASA administrator and senator who went to space?
It was
that one?
Bill Nelson. Who knows? Hey, Tarek.
Yes, Bill. Well, I guess yes, Rod.
Why do astronauts lift off at noon?
I don't know why.
Because 12 o'clock is time for lunch.
Ha, ha, ha.
Okay.
I would believe it. Yes, Rod.
Also from Bill. An astronaut washes his car and then washes his wife's car. What do you call that?
What, a double eclipse? What?
Extravehicular activity.
I like that one. That's my favorite, Bill. That's my favorite.
From Paul Romaine. Hey, Tarek.
Yes, Rod, Paul.
Where will I read about the ISS after it's gone?
I don't know. Well, space.com, right? But where?
The obituaries.
Is it too soon?
Okay.
I think it's too soon. It's too soon.
Only a couple more. From Michael Diamond. Hey, Tarek.
Yes, Michael and Rod.
What does NASA stand for?
I know, but I think you're going to tell me too. So,
not another space acronym. Okay.
These are all new.
Lunatic laugh.
This is the first time I'm hearing all these.
We've been busy. Thank you, John. From Adam, well, his screen name on Discord is Adam Fantup. I don't know if that's his real last name or not. Hey, Tarek.
Yes. Yes, Rod. Yes, Adam.
How does the solar system keep its pants up?
I don't know. Is it with the asteroid belt? Is it?
Is it? Well done.
I got that one. I got one.
Now, I've heard that some people want to whip us with an asteroid belt when it's joke time of this show.
Hey,
but you can help. You can help. Send us your best, worst, or most different space joke at twist@twit.tv. That's TWIS at twit.tv. And we'll include you in the mayhem.
I got tears today.
Tarek, do you want to do headlines or get a break done and then come back and just jam through?
Well, let's get a breakdown and jam through. We got a lot of headlines.
Yeah.
Let's take a break. Let's
do a
break.
Take
5.
We'll be surprised. We're going to have a break. We didn't even telegraph that. We'll be right back. Stand by. We're getting a lot of GIFs today.
I know. I can't see them all because I'm
3, 4 in a row.
I like the Benny. I like Patrick's with his spaceship. That's fun. We're talking about our Discord and in the Twitterverse, everybody. Tweet? I don't know what you call it. Twit.tv or
well, not the Twitterverse, whatever you say.
No.
Oh, Asteroid 2024 YR4, how you do keep us on the move, and now you're fading away. So
that's right.
Our favorite Earth-shattering, dangerous asteroid has become a mere blip in our memory. It's gone from slightly risky to highly hazardous to, oh my God, is this really going to happen? And now been ground down with further observation and calculation to a 1 in 20,000 risk, which I don't know, what was it at the worst? 1 in 32 or something? It was pretty.
It was like, it was like 3%, I think is what it was. 3.2% chance. So but
this
now,
is good. And we have the Catalina Sky Survey and JPL to thank, as I understand it, who were able to find, actually, so I say additional observation, but it was also pre-discovery data that went back and looked at imaging from well before we knew what it was and said, oh, there it is. It's not coming at us. Well, so Barstow, you've been spared.
That's right. And the rest of us too. This was actually something that the scientists that we were talking to at space.com, they told us this was going to happen the entire time. They were like, oh, look, the chances are going to go up, then they're going to go down, and then it's all going to be fine. But I don't think they expected the chances to go to the record height of like 3.2% chance, which is the highest it's ever been for any object before getting, not fully dismissed. Like right now, the impact probability is 0, is like the quote that the scientists are putting out there, but it's not totally 0, right? 1 in, what is it? 1 in 20,000. Is that what you said? There, it's still, there's still like a percentage chance. It's just like not 1 in 32 anymore. So it's a lot more of a comfort for the rest of us who, live and walk and breathe and eat and all the fun stuff. Watch, binge watch.
For those of us who were looking for the excitement of seeing a white dot in the sky that didn't move anywhere, just got bigger and bigger and bigger.
Were you planning your Armageddon party? Is that what that was, Rod? You're gonna have to return all that stuff.
Armageddon party for it to land somewhere in New Jersey.
Oh, thanks,
welcome.
Rod.
Well, you keep saying your house is falling apart. This would solve your problems.
I still have a hole in my wall in my kitchen. That's almost been a year.
All right, okay.
That gets fixed next week. It's going to be great. But yeah, so we don't have to worry about the asteroid. Cheers. One thing that is very exciting, though, is that now 2032 is on the calendar. Let's plan an observation campaign. And, I think there's enough time that someone could launch something to this as it flies by, like even if it's a CubeSat.
Yeah.
So I challenge some entrepreneurs and 3D printers out there, you people who are really smart with the machines and whatnot, build something and get it on one of these rockets. Let's see if we can launch it to this asteroid. That'd be pretty cool.
Okay, all you billionaires listening to this show. All right. Woe to SLS, the story that just won't go away.
This is from Arsetica, right? I think it is, yeah. Oh, Eric Berger
it kind of feels like the tide is turning. And while there are those who still support SLS for the first few lunar landing missions, including some very prominent people like a former NASA chief scientist and others, even those people, some of them are beginning to falter. The latest about face was from Scott Pace, who was the secretary of the National Space Council under the first Trump administration, and a leading voice in space policy. And he wrote for a congressional hearing. He had been championing SLS for over a decade, now wants an off-ramp to commercial providers, and also wants Moon and Mars. Now, I know Scott some. I don't think he'd say that just to be in step with the administration, but that is basically, well, what we're hearing from Elon is kill that rocket and buy mine. But what I think this is look, let's use SLS for what we've got for what it's good for and move on.
Yeah, this was really interesting because this came out of a House Science Subcommittee meeting this week on the Capitol. It was called Step by Step: The Artemis Program and NASA's Path to Human Exploration of the Moon, Mars, and Beyond. And what it really was the new Trump administration's like the first opportunity to kind of get what do you call it? Like I was going to say like the oil stick dip, but like the census, thing to see like where things are. Right? Does anyone do that anymore? Like they use the oil stick to see like, I don't know.
My Jaguar, you can't. There's no way. You have to do this electronic rigmarole, but I like dipsticks. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's like that. And it was Scott Pace and another expert, Dan Debunking at the Purdue University, to really give their take on like where things are right now. And there was a lot of hand-wringing and complaining amongst the many members of the panel on both kind of ideological spectrums, the Democrats and the Republicans there, about where things were. Of course, the Democrats are really upset about the federal agencies like NASA being really under fire by the current administration, while the Republican representatives were really upset about what could happen in their states, because there's a lot of NASA assets for SLS in their states, in Alabama, in Texas, in Florida, etc. And yet also they're frustrated about where things are right now. We've launched one SLS rocket in the 18 years of its near 18 years of its designs, etc. So it was very interesting to kind of see where things are. In fact, one of the things that these lawmakers and these experts were saying is that they really need to have alternatives in hand and in mind right now. Like you were saying, Scott Pace talking about how they really need to get an off-ramp from this system. They're halfway there with the Artemis 3 contract, but Starship still has a long way to go. In fact, I'm sure we're going to talk about that later today too. And so I'm not really sure like where things are. This really felt very much like a tone-setting meeting. And Eric is right in that it really is a continuation of what's going to happen with SLS. They keep pushing back the next one, and now it's 2026. Is it going to stay there? We don't know. There was also a lot of discussion from lawmakers about Orion, and or as one lawmaker put it, Orion. So it was weird, right? But there was talk about like if that's going to be ready as well because of the heat shield issues. So we're going to see how this develops. I think that this was the first salvo. I think that it's really weighing heavily, but we should expect some significant changes in the near future.
All right. And we got a few more headlines to get through and a whole lot of questions. So
we can skip a couple. I mean, we can just do a rapid fire if you want to do one.
Lunar Trailblazer lost and found. Lunar Trailblazer, a new probe to orbit the moon, was launched on a Falcon 9 on Wednesday. And this is from a JPL press release. They said Caltech Mission Control, which I thought was interesting. So they must have it now at the campus. Established successful telemetry contract with the orbiter, whose core mission is to search for watery ice deposits on the moon, finally. Then on Thursday, it went quiet. Hours later, needed comms for mission success came up again, but they're still trying to establish the actual links that they have to. I guess they got a heartbeat, but then you have to go and see if you can get everything else. So notably, this is what's called a Simple X mission, which they characterize as a class of low-cost rideshare missions that have a higher risk tolerance by design. Yeah. And my question for you, my friend, is this a nervous step back towards the horrid faster, better, cheaper era when we're losing Mars probes right and left?
Well, I hope not. SIMPLEX stands for Small Innovative Missions for Planetary Exploration. So it is another acronym, as our jokester so well put it earlier. But I think that this is an example of two things. Number one, this was kind of a ride of convenience for NASA and for the Lunar Trailblazer people. They were looking for a ride to space and something that would be affordable. And Firefly Aerospace, it turned out, had bought an entire Falcon 9 to launch their, not Firefly, pardon me, Intuitive Machines had bought an entire Falcon 9 to launch their IM-2 mission to space through Athena lander, rover / hopper. It's got all the things on this one. And they had extra mass available on the rocket, so they were able to have space to then take NASA along there. Now, that being said, we've seen this kind of similar take on smaller and faster spacecraft before. We saw it during the SLS mission. We're talking about that too, with their 10 different CubeSats, and of those 10 CubeSats, maybe a handful of them,
like 4,
managed to survive. And that was something that they did set up because they were saying that they were going to try something different. This could be an evolution of that, where they were trying to do something a little bit more affordable, but perhaps a faster with less tolerance. However, I think that this is a general hiccup. It wasn't like they were trying to cut corners and do it, but it was that they were going to do something new, and they had a hiccup on their spacecraft, as we've seen from time to time with all of these. So it could be kind of like 1 parts of one and 2 of the other, that kind of a thing. But I hope it works out, to be honest, because this is going to look for some ice and study the ice distribution around the sun. I was going to say this, the moon, for good places for future bases and whatnot. Well, maybe if they go in winter to the sun, I don't know.
There you go. I like that. All right. At this one, I'm just going to leave open for comment from you. Katy Perry in space.
I was so excited.
What and why? And why should I care?
Because, baby, she's a firework, Rod. She's going to show us what she's worth. And she's going to make us go, oh, right? No, this is awesome. This is actually, you didn't know I know the words to that song, right? Is that what it is?
No, I'm just laughing at you. You're weird.
Blue Origin. Actually, we had hints of... John, I'm giving you gold here. All right, this is gold.
Okay,
right.
Move on. We got to go to an ad.
All right. So, fresh on the heels of their last human spaceflight, Blue Origin announced their next crew for what they're calling the NS-31 mission, and it turns out that it's actually going to be make a bit of history, not just because one of the crew members is in fact pop sensation, super mega award-winning singer Katy Perry, but also because it's going to be the first all-female crew ever. In fact, I was talking to Robert Perlman, friend of the show and editor of Collect Space, when this story broke, and he confirmed to me that the last all-female crew was Valentina Tereshkova's one-woman flight in the 60s. So this is the first to be an all-female crew, and it's going to have a lot of celebrities and luminaries on it. It's organized by Lauren Sanchez, the fiance of Jeff Bezos,
who's flying.
She's flying on the mission, and also Jeff Bezos is the owner of Blue Origin. So I guess there's a definite in there to get things moving, but it's also going to include several other people. So it's six women in all. You have the STEM board CEO and former NASA rocket scientist Aisha Bao, film producer Carrie Ann Flynn, CBS morning co-host Gail King. I watch her on TV. That's exciting. And then bioastronautics research scientist Amanda Wynn. So I think it's a really interesting concept, and they're hoping to inspire other women, another generation of explorers with this flight. It'll be interesting if there's any kind of different rollout for this human spaceflight from Blue Origin than there was from the last one, which was really just a very quiet, here's 5 of the 6 people that we're going to launch who bought their tickets to space. We're not even going to tell you who the 6th person was because they don't want all the publicity, to what is now a very high publicity, high profile flight launching in the spring. So be on the lookout for that. And then we're going to see how Katy Perry and the rest of these celebrities do in space.
I'm looking out. Okay. Last and quickly, Blue Ghost going to the moon. Where are we?
Yeah, well, we're almost there.
at the moon, yeah.
We're almost there. And if you keep asking, they're going to turn that moon lander around, Rod. But but no, Blue Ghost is Firefly Aerospace's first moon lander, and carrying a NASA payload. I think, if memory serves, a couple of them under the Eclipse program. But they are going to land on Sunday morning. Just I guess around like between 2 and 4 a.m. is what the current target is Eastern time, and everything seems to be going well. In fact, they just captured some spectacular imagery of the moon's far side as they were soaring over it. So this spacecraft seems to be really on point as they're approaching it. So it should be pretty exciting. And I think everyone, please note that right now there are 3, count them, 1, 2, 3. Private landers headed to the moon. We've got Blue Ghost landing on Sunday, March 2nd. We have the Intuitive Machines Athena lander landing around March 6th, March 7th, which is like not even a week later. And then you have the iSpace Resilience lander, which is iSpace's second from Japan attempt to try to land on the moon. That's going to land, I think, near the end of March, early April, that kind of thing. So that's really awesome that we've got this huge fleet all going there at the same time, and a bit reminiscent of last year when we had a couple as well. So
fingers crossed for commercial success so we can get on with this. Exactly. All right, let's go to a quick break and we'll be right back. Stand by with your questions. So stand by. All right, so number 1, my partner, Roy Delcam says, what is the X-37B secretive space plane looking for on these long missions? Now, just to set some background here, it's been flying for about 15 years, and of course there was an X-37, I guess you'd call it now X-37A, although it was just the X-37 at the time that was used prior to this for testing and so forth. But they've got 2 X-37Bs that can stay up there for, I don't know, I think this one's been up so far for what,
900 something.
Almost 1,000 days, 908 days. And it's interesting because normally they launch them on a Falcon, or in the past an Atlas or a Falcon 9. This one that's up now was launched on a Falcon Heavy because it was going to a highly elliptical, high altitude orbit that's actually further out than geosynchronous, which is what, 25,000 miles, I think?
Yeah, about that, 32.
Yeah, so high. You know, it's like a tenth of the way to the moon. So this program was started in 1999 by NASA to fly in the shuttle payload bay. I'm glad they didn't do that because it's not good to put things full of fuel in the shuttle payload bay.
Just to put some perspective, you can fit 2 of these back to back in the space shuttle payload bay, which is like 60 feet long. So
yeah,
that's how small they are.
Filled with hydrazine. What a great idea.
Exactly. The bomb in the bay, they used to call it. Transferred
to DOD in 2004, and now it's part of Space Force. Originally, at least stated to be intended for satellite repair, but the Air Force calls it an experimental test program to demonstrate technologies for reliable, reusable, uncrewed space test platform for the U.S. Air Force, which means we're doing secrets and we're not going to tell you what we're doing.
Yeah.
So it has tested, reputedly, it has tested such technology as Hall thrusters, which are ion engines, and the EM drive.
Yeah.
Which is supposed to be, free energy from weird, spooky Andromedan physics. And, of course, probably advanced spy techniques. So what do you know?
Well, I know 2 things. Number 1, these were built by Boeing. I think they call it their Skunk Works. Is that right? What they called it? Their Phantom Works?
That was Lockheed. It might be Phantom Works.
It was, I think it was the Phantom Works. So they built these for NASA, like originally, or at least for one of them for NASA, and then NASA wasn't going to use it, and they were going to junk it. So they got the Air Force to buy it, and then of course the Space Force adopted it overall. And to give our listeners who aren't watching the stream or and checking out the link that we have there, an idea. Imagine like a small space plane, or maybe like a supersized guided missile that you might think with some kind of pointy wings popping off the back, and that black and white type of tiled look that the space shuttles have, and just shrink it all the way down. They put a payload bay in it that opens much like the ones that you see on the space shuttle, but inside that is a solar array that deploys, and it fans out to build power. That's what they did for this vehicle, and it's a fully autonomous space plane. They can land it. I think they've landed it both in at Kennedy Space Center, and
yeah.
what was it? It was at Mojave though, right? At Edwards. That's where they landed it.
So Edwards and Vandenberg and the shuttle runway at Kennedy were all identified as landing zones. I thought they might have landed at Vandenberg, but for sure in Mojave. Yeah.
I could be wrong. Yeah, I know they did it at Mojave. So the missions have just been getting longer and longer. I think the first one was in the early 2010s or so, and it lasted a good 6 to 8 months. Then they went to a year. Then they went to 2 years, and now this one at 900 days is just really stretching that envelope. They have two, like you said, you called this one 30, like I think Extra 7A. There is another one, and together they call them, I think they call them OTVs, right? Orbital Test Vehicles, and so they do all sorts of things. What they do in particular on a regular day-to-day, we don't know. They think that they're reconnaissance platforms. They think that they test some technology. We have heard that they have deployed a couple of small satellites and tests in the past. And we just recently, in fact, we have a picture of it on space.com. I forgot to grab it. But we got our first picture from this spacecraft of the Earth, like way far below. It's the first declassified one in, while it's going on. And that was really exciting to see. Yeah, here we've got this picture of it now that John is showing on screen. This is an image from the payload bay of the X-37B on this super high elliptical orbit, showing kind of like a 3/4 Earth below with a little bit of the solar array there. This is just absolutely spectacular because the last time we saw a spacecraft like this was within like 2 seconds of spacecraft separation. Again, a very rarity when this one launched. We had never seen that before, and maybe they forgot to cut off the feed. Maybe they did that to give us all a bit of a thrill. But those are the glimpses that we get of it in space. We won't see it again unless they declassify more, until it flies itself back to Earth and lands either at KSC or Edwards or wherever the Space Force wants to land it. So it's doing some kind of technology test for the military. Go ahead, Rod.
On YouTube, Eric Duckman mentions it did land a couple at Vandenberg. So thank you for looking that up for us.
Thank you, Eric.
We obviously didn't do our homework. Okay, are we ready for the next one?
I would just point out that I think that the X-37B is pretty exciting, and I have a X-37B cozy in my car to keep my drinks warm. So now I'm ready for the next one.
Never cease to amaze. And of course, now the Chinese have one too.
Yeah, Shenlong. It's called Shenlong.
Looks kind of like the X-37B because everything they do looks like everything we do. Okay. Hey, try doing this one without getting political. Elon Musk versus Andreas Morgenson.
Oh, you saw that, huh?
Yeah, it just beat me with an asteroid belt, So Musk, bless his dark soul.
So Jim, this is from Jim Reed. Is that who this is from?
Yes. Sorry, I should have said that. Musk joining the administration, presidential administration, tweeting out the astronauts, Sonny and Butch have been abandoned on the space station and they were left there for political reasons and so on and so forth. And I mean, something else may come out about this that we don't know. But at this point, as far as we could tell, they were left there because we were concerned about the risks in Starliner and they hadn't been brought back yet, principally because SpaceX wasn't ready to do so. Well, although there is a capsule up there, but you'd have to completely reshuffle the seating arrangements and stuff to make it work.
Yeah.
Sorry, let me just finish the thought. So the issue here is not so much what's being said by the administration and Musk, but the fact that when an astronaut on the space station came on the air and said, "Hey, that's not how it is," Elon Musk shouted him down in a pretty irresponsible way, in my opinion.
Well, yeah, this is really strange, and it's kind of in the arena. I don't like to get that political, but it's in the arena of I wish everyone would just go ahead and do the work and let's focus on the task at hand. But when this came up, the astronauts on the space station, Sonny and Butch, had just given TV interviews saying that they didn't feel stranded, that they thought that a lot of the characterizations, some of them by people in power. In fact, Sonny Morgan mentioned that she felt that President Trump's assessment that they had been abandoned was not fully accurate. She told that to CBS News. And so right after that is when you get Elon's comments about how they were left there for political reasons, and then a lot of the blowback came back from that. astronauts saying, actual astronauts like Andreas Morgenson of ESA saying, no, that's not the case. It wasn't political reasons. And then it just got really, really nasty. Elon was calling them names. A lot of other astronauts, like the Kelly brothers, Scott Kelly and Senator Mark Kelly, came in over the weekend to also kind of blast back. And it got very personal. And it's just very sad to see that kind of an altercation, especially from people that are ostensibly in charge of a personal human spaceflight program, because you think that there would be a bit more professionalism, amongst everybody there. So, where are we? Is that whole what am I going to call it? I don't want to call it a tempest. That whole occurrence, that whole situation happened, and we were getting ready on the media side to get NASA's take on what the next crewed mission is going to be. Crew 10 launching on the SpaceX Dragon that is going to relieve the Crew 9 astronauts and let Butch and Sunny come back to Earth on their own Crew 9 Dragon, currently at the space station, which has been there for many months. They have not been left without a ride home. It's been up there for a while. And NASA canceled it, probably because they don't want reporters asking the heads of their programs, was it really for political reasons, or what do they, or the astronauts who are going to be on the flight, what do they think about, the person that builds their spacecraft calling out astronauts like that? And so it's just a very unfortunate situation to be in that isn't about the actual work itself, if that makes sense, right?
Well, it's really about Elon having a short circuit between his brain and his mouth. I don't mean to be insulting, but the guy severely lacks filtration. Now, when he first started coming to the public eye in the mid-2010s, 2014, 2015, 2016, it was kind of adorable in a way. It's like, oh, here's this guy giving his first fifth grade book report. He's shining his shoes on the back of his pant cuffs and stuff like that. And so you went, okay, this is somebody who's obviously extremely intelligent, has a little bit of a communications challenge perhaps, but he's brilliant. Now, I still believe he's brilliant, which doesn't mean I like a lot of what he does, but I do think he's a very smart man. What's puzzling is, with that intellect comes this kind of barbed tongue, that lashes out continually. And it really does feel like kind of free association. And yet,
it seems like it's not necessary. That's the thing to me. It doesn't seem like it's necessary to go that route when you
extra necessary. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, let's. I think that's enough of that one.
By the way, just a side note, an observation that I realized this morning as I was thinking about, billionaires, as one does, is I just realized that Elon is the only billionaire so far who has built his own space program but not ridden on his rocket, because Jeff Bezos flew on the first crewed flight of New Shepard, not to orbit. Richard Branson flew on the first crewed flight of, not the first crewed flight, but the first passenger flight, I guess, because they had done other test ones on Spaceship Two. But Elon has this private orbital rocket, and he hasn't ridden on it. And it reminded me that when I interviewed him years and years and years ago, he said that he wasn't interested in actually riding on the rocket, like being among the first for it. He'd like to make sure that it worked properly and would go and do the other things, like make sure that the infrastructure was there to get to Mars. I just thought that was interesting. Or thought that he's kind of a departure from the billionaires.
It's kind of like, would you want to fly in a plane designed by Howard Hughes if he wouldn't?
All right. Or if you were Mark Zuckerberg and you built your whole Meta VR and decided not to use it because you were going to go live on a farm somewhere. I don't know. So,
all right, let's go to another break and we'll be right back. Go nowhere. Last one from Jim Reed. You covered potential. No, sorry, that was not the one. If the mission is cut short for the ISS and impacts the Boeing Starliner, would the government get any money from Starliner program back? My answer is, with them about $2 billion in the hole, I doubt it. Plus, they're trying to sell that division. I think they want to get away from it as fast as possible.
Yeah, it's good luck. Good luck. It's like the time I had all those coupons at Sports Center, and then they went out of business and I couldn't use them. No, they're not going to get that money back. I don't know if they'd actually get credit for future flights to like another space station destination. That would be interesting to know. I think that's one of the things Jim is like asking about. If they retire, because I don't think we talked about this too much, but Elon said last week that he wants to retire it by 2027, 3 years early than the plan. And ostensibly, I think Boeing is on the hook for 4 or 5 crewed flights of Starliner. Is that right? Something like that. It's in single digits. And so we'd have to see if they're going to parlay that need to a commercial station. Like Vast is getting ready to launch their first one next year. So we'll have to see if they're going to try to make that switch, or if, as you said, they just shut it down when the space station shuts down.
All right. From Martin Lawler, my good friend Martin Lawler, one of 2 members of the Private Space Thugs Club.
Space Thugs? Wow, you have to tell me about that.
Yeah. We have T-shirts and everything.
Wow.
He says, Rod, what was your impression of Gene Kranz and assessment of his impact in the Apollo years? That's actually a really good question. I met Gene once. I interviewed him for a couple of hours.
Before you go, tell people who Gene Kranz is.
Sorry. Gene Kranz was one of the early flight directors during the Apollo era and Gemini era. Actually, he was a controller in Mercury, and then I think he became a director on Gemini. And, of course, made famous by the movie Apollo 13, Failure is Not an Option, which he never
Portrayed
said.
by Ed Harris.
Portrayed by the ever irascible Ed Harris, who did a great job. And that was kind of Gene then. He was an Air Force veteran, very capable. I wouldn't say forceful, but disciplined.
Yeah.
And I think one of his most outstanding moments to me, and I'm working on a project with Jerry Griffin, who was another flight director of the Apollo era, and we talked about this quite a bit, was after the Apollo 1 fire, which killed 3 astronauts in 1967. Mission Control came back a couple of days later, and everything had basically been locked down after the fire because it was a disaster and they needed to know what happened and preserve data and all that. So it was either a day or 2 after that, Kranz called everybody together, including backroom folks and some other people, into Mission Control. And he gave a talk that is now called the Kranz Dictum, I think, which basically said, from now on, Mission Control will be perfect. You will write this on your boards. You will do this every day. You will look at this. We will never make a mistake again. People's lives are at stake, and so on and so forth. It was a very moving speech. It was not recorded, and it was not written down, but people have tried to recall it over the years enough to repeat it so we know generally what he said. And apparently it was quite moving for everyone involved after this horrible tragedy, which killed 3 astronauts on the ground. They weren't even in launch mode. They were just testing. And by the time I met him, which is 2005, he had mellowed quite a bit. He was very kind. He was very reflective, as a lot of these guys are later in life. He had spent a lot of time kind of in introspection about what it all meant, and a real gentleman. Now, after him, I interviewed Chris Kraft, who was one of the very first people to establish Mission Control, and he came out of its NASA's predecessor. And Chris was, I don't want to say bitter, but he was definitely edgy about the whole thing, was not happy about the direction NASA was going in 2005. So it was quite a contrast. But Kranz was a very gentle soul, and I really enjoyed interviewing him. And obviously a smart guy, and he's kind of the living handbook for Mission Control during the space race. Did you ever meet him, Tarek?
No, I have a feeling that I may have interviewed him one time only. I know I have his book, so but I think
everybody has if they're into it. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I only interviewed him like maybe once or twice in a anniversary kind of type setting, to kind of get his take on the whole legacy of Apollo, etc. So, but but I'm not the historian who would have had that chance to talk to him as much as you might have had. So, so I would defer to your judgment about all of that. But in my recollection from the interview, I remember him just being a very, very calm and collected person. So,
yeah. And coincidentally, Jim Lewis wrote in and said, "Hey, what's Buzz Aldrin like?" So I get to answer 2 questions now.
Yeah.
So Buzz, if you saw First Man, you saw kind of a compacted version, an abbreviated version of Buzz.
First Man
I've
is
told this story before.
The First Man is the Neil Armstrong biopic.
Yeah. And Buzz was not portrayed in a terribly flattering way. So I called Joe Engle, who was also an Apollo astronaut, later shuttle astronaut. Joe didn't fly on Apollo, but he trained for it, and said, you worked with Buzz for years. And he goes, yep. And I said, does this movie portrayal make any sense to you? And he said, oh, yeah. Like, exactly so. Now, I didn't know Buzz then, obviously, because I was a kid. Knowing him later in life, he's a person who says exactly what he thinks. And you get the sense that there's 5 billion brains trying to get through one mouth. When he talks to you, it comes fast and furious and highly technical. But he's very passionate about space exploration. He's very passionate about internationalism. He's very passionate about working with China, if we can do it in a way that's constructive for both countries. And he's really, really, really driven to get things moving, to, as he likes to put it, get your a beep beep to Mars.
I think we can say that. I think we're allowed, right?
I never, a $sign to Mars. But
he sells T-shirts that say that, by the way.
But he spends a lot of time designing these things. So I just was writing something recently about the Aldrin cycler, working with him. And this is a large spacecraft that would be on a permanent orbit between Earth and Mars. So it's a low energy thing. You don't have to put much propellant into it. You just have to adjust it every now and then. Now, you'd have to have a shuttle from the Earth or the Moon up to the cycler. And then when the cycler reaches Mars, much faster than a traditional rocket, you have to have another shuttle either down to Phobos or down the surface of Mars. But you've got this kind of permanent space liner going in this big loop between these two worlds, which means you can, if you have a couple of them, let's say every year, you can load up cargo and people and send them out there, and guarantees this continuous flow of stuff to Mars, assuming that you want to have a long-term settlement there. So I got to give him a lot of credit.
That feels like something we should build. So.
Not just for being smart. He was the first person at MIT to get a doctorate in orbital dynamics, which even today makes my brain hurt, but he kind of invented some of that field of study. But he was also one of the few people from the Apollo era and the astronaut corps that really, kept on this campaign to get it moving, get back beyond Earth orbit, get back to the moon, move things along for the rest of his life. And, most of the other astronauts are believers, but they went off to other things. They ran airlines, they ran liquor distribution companies, all kinds of different stuff. So I got to give Buzz a lot of credit. He probably could have made more money going into private industry that way, but he chose to kind of go his own way. And of course, was on Dancing with the Stars.
Yeah.
So he does have a bit of a thespian limelight streak in him as well.
Well, there's also, this very, very public history. I think that we don't see a lot of in astronauts. Astronauts are American heroes or not American, right? Depending on where they're from. And that's the pedestal that they're on. But, as we've seen with Lisa Nowak and maybe some other astronauts that have had struggled and had problems afterward, it's not all rockets and roses and all of that stuff. It's a hard job, and it can take a toll. Yeah. And he has been very public in both his books and outright about his challenges with alcohol, later on, and depression. And depression and the turnaround that was. And I think that is also like a really important part of that legacy, is to show kind of all of the dimensions. I have a Buzz Aldrin story, if you don't mind, that I wanted to share.
Can I just touch on one thing before you do?
Yeah, go ahead.
I'm really glad you mentioned that, because I omitted it. He wrote in a book, it was 2 or 3 years after he got back, about that depression. And this was in a time in the early 70s. Test pilots didn't talk about this kind of stuff. No, they didn't talk about that stuff. They still don't talk about this kind of stuff. But he came right out and said, look, I can only speak for myself, but here's what I went through. That was courageous. And, at that point, he wasn't still an astronaut, so there wasn't a risk to his career in that sense. But he could have been ridiculed. He could have been frozen out by his brother pilots and astronauts. So that was you're right. That was a very big deal.
Yeah. And it's really important that you get the whole measure, I think, of that there. Buzz Aldrin was the subject of the very first space story I ever wrote as a professional journalist. Did I ever tell you that? I'm telling everybody now, right?
Yeah.
In fact, also in 1999, which is the same year Space.com was founded, I wasn't here. I was working for the Los Angeles Times, and Buzz Aldrin.
As a child employee.
That's right. That's right. I was still in my 20s, but Buzz Aldrin was there at the Yorba Linda Nixon Presidential Library with the biggest cartoonish plushy moon boots I've ever seen, because they provided them to him to put his moon boots prints in concrete at the library for the 30th anniversary of the Apollo 11 moon landing. And they said, "Hey, you like space, Tarek?" And I'm like, "You bet your, keister." They said, "Why don't you go write this thing about Buzz Aldrin?" And I was like, "All right." And I was like an intern, I think, back then at the newspaper. And I did. I got to see him. I got to meet him, and actually he signed his portrait right here. Can you see that? Is that?
I can't believe you had that ready. Very good.
Yeah. And he signed it right here.
You know what that signature cost at his peak of fame?
Well, this one in 1999 cost me $10 because it was not free. So
in the 2000s, it was $700.
Wow.
And if it was a 3D object like an Omega watch box or something, it was $1,200 to $1,300. So
wow. So I got a bargain, is what you're saying. So
so hang on to that. So let's go to a quick break and come back with our last few. Don't go anywhere. Okay. Let's go to, and I think this is a Tarek one.
Yes.
Biren Aman, MD, who says he was bitten by the space bug in 9th grade when he read a book called Red Giants and White Dwarves. I think I was first bitten by a book called The Big Golden Book of Rockets. So that's pretty impressive. He says, "What are your thoughts on the solar sail from the Planetary Society?" I think they did too, didn't they?
They did light sail, right? And then there was another one that didn't make it.
Okay.
Yeah.
But it says in testing and a couple of launches, we would love to hear your perspective on long-term future with photons being a propulsion for the exploration of our cosmos.
I'm actually, I'm of the mind that we don't use solar sails like enough. It must be trickier than I understand it to be, because we have the Planetary Society with light sail, and I think light sail 2 was the one that succeeded. The first one, it launched on like one of those converted ICBMs that Russia used to launch, and it had some issues. But light sail 2 was amazing, and you could even track it from the ground and see it fly overhead. And after that, we saw NASA have their own. They had NanoSail D. We saw Japan launched the Akatsuki. Not Akatsuki. Akatsuki was a probe. It was called Icarus. That was the name of it. And not only that, but they included like a little lipstick camera that took a picture of it after it was fully unfurled, which was spectacular. And I just think that they're awesome. Of course, in sci-fi, they're amazing. They're these giant gossamer, ocean liners.
Well, in sci-fi, you can get from the Earth to Mars in about 8 hours with a solar sail.
I know.
Which is not quite the case. They're slow.
But I think that we haven't really maximized the use for them. We haven't done aside from Japan, which deployed the Icarus satellite, the solar sail, on the way to Venus and then flew by Venus with it, which is pretty cool. We haven't tried to do deep, ultra deep space testing with these sails. And I think that I would like to see something like that. Now, of course, we do need to get better at using them in orbit, and we haven't seen too many of those types of missions. But I think that from a concept proof standpoint, that the light sail one was really, really cool and successful, because they were able to keep it flying and maneuver it for a good long time, longer than I think they initially planned. And I think that that's something that for a nonprofit like the Planetary Society should be hailed and lauded, because that is like the heights of civilian science right there. And I just wonder how high they could go if Elon wrote them a check, or Jeff Bezos wrote them a check for like $1 bajillion, what kind of light sail craft could they make? So, by the way, there is a book.
Unlikely. Yeah.
There is a book by Michael Flynn called The Wreck of the River of Stars. And it is all about a commercial solar sail liner that is far past its prime, the heyday. has gone. So it's like an opulent Titanic type style, but it's in a time where there's a faster engine, so they don't use it anymore. And it's all about the final voyage and how disastrous it is. And it is absolutely gripping from like if you like sail type of spacecraft, The Wreck of the River Stars is by Michael Flynn is a great sci-fi book to read.
Hey, Quippy put a link to a Wikipedia article and a very nice graphic of solar sails up on Discord. And if you were in Club Twit, you'd be on Discord too and seeing all this great stuff, although we also get great things from the other platforms. But had to throw a little ping in there for Club Twit because it helps us and it helps you and it helps everybody. What?
I'm just going to have one correction that Quippy shows the Icarus solar sail, not Light Sail 2 from JAXA, because that's Venus in the background there.
You just had to say,
I'm so sorry.
It's not my solar sail. It's somebody else's solar sail.
But it's still an awesome one. Everyone should like it. John is waving his hands. He's like, I can't even with these people.
Get over yourself, you guys. I would like to give a shout out to JPL guy and former associate Rob Staley, who put together a group called the World Space Foundation, I think in the 80s. I was working with them in the 90s. And they did a lot of work on solar sails there, a lot of early work with deployment mechanisms and it was this spindle that had like tape measure type material that went out and actually tested it in 1G, of course. It worked very well. Unable to fly it ultimately, but they were early pioneers in solar sail stuff, and I suspect probably work with the Planetary Society at some point. But, let me just add one more thing. There is another type of solar sail.
I was going to say, yeah.
Which would be interstellar.
There's two other kinds then. There's two other kinds. So there's this one.
Okay,
you talk about this one. You talk about this one.
Just hush and let me say what it is. Golly. Wow, it's the first time I've said golly in about 10 years. It's the first time on the air ever. Which is a large, depending on which design it is, either very small or very large solar sail, but it would basically be powered by a laser or a stream of high energy particles coming from Earth or somewhere near Earth. Now we're talking about a gigawatt kind of laser. So because if you're going to send it that far that at the speed you want, it has to be very powerful. But the nice thing is the solar sail has to carry no propellant. The sun helps push it out of the solar system. It continues accelerating continuously. And then when you turn on this power supply on Earth, basically what it means is you've got this transport system that doesn't have to carry its fuel, so its mass is very low. And so it goes faster, and you can start getting in the percentage of speed of light zone without too much drama.
In fact, if you watch the Three Body Problem on Netflix, that laser sail concept was what they used to try to propel the human brain off to the alien solar system. And that interstellar concept has been come up with. What is it they called? It's the nonprofit Breakthrough Starshot. That's the whole concept of that, is to send a bunch of little chips with solar cells all the way out to Alpha Centauri. Also, and mag sails is the other one that said it doesn't use sails. It uses magnetic field lines and electrical lines to tack using the magnetic fields of the solar system. That's the other one.
I guess it's Quippy noted that's super cool, but they better clear the airspace before they fire up the laser. That's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
It would be it would be a very quick death at any rate.
I was going to say someone warned Alpha Centauri because whatever we send with that laser, it's not stopping when it gets there. It's going to keep going.
That's true. Well, that's the sad thing. There's really no way to tack effectively to slow down and either go into orbit or at least do a slow flyby, which is why you want to send a whole flock of these things, because then you can stagger them.
Yeah.
And it's actually like slowing down. If you have, a couple hundred of them and they're strung out, you get this longer view. Okay, I want to. This is a kind of stepping off the side. This is from Lily Stromberg. Thank you, Lily. What's the best meteor shower to go and see? Best meteor shower, and then I'm going to turn it over to you. So the Orionids and the Perseids are the two big ones every year. Perseids are in the summer in August. Orionids are in December in the wintertime. Depending on where you live, the Orionids can be a real chore because it gets cold. But the Leonid shower, when it peaks, which is supposed to be every 30 years, but is kind of unpredictable, is the most spectacular ever recorded. Mm-hmm. And we have a graphic of it that we can put up. In 1833, It was like, I don't know, thousands and thousands per hour. So the sky, and of course it was a lot darker in 1833, right? Because people were using oil lamps and stuff. But the sky was just like on fire with these things.
Yeah.
And I saw it, as I've repeated on the show ad nauseum, so I'll keep it short, but I saw it in 1966 completely by accident from a backyard in Pasadena, which had a lot of light pollution. But that year it also really fired up, and it was, for a kid my age, terrifying and really exciting because, again, it looked like God was just using a salt shaker in the sky and the stuff was burning up. Mm-hmm. Haven't really seen that since. So in
2002, the Leonids were quite good as well, because Jasmine and I saw them from the top of her apartment building in New York City, and there were quite a lot of them. So that was great. But no, those are good picks. Or the Orionids are in are one of my favorites, Lily, because they are in October, so it's always like Halloween time.
I thought they were in December.
No, the December's is Geminids, and that's actually the better one for the year. So if we're, according to Joe Rayo and Bill Cook at NASA, Lily, who NASA, he's with the NASA Meteoroid office, we check with them every year to find out what the best ones are. The Geminids are in December, and they're usually the best because it's the darkest time of year. The nights are longer. And the air is still, and they're one of the most promising ones. But Rod is right in that the Orionids can be very cool in October, and they're also pieces of Halley's Comet, which I think is really exciting.
Halley's Comet,
Comet Halley, as you will. So is the Eta Aquarid meteor shower, and that is in May. It's like a twofer that you get from Comet Halley with these two meteor showers. The Leonids, though, in November, and the Perseids in August are typically what we usually like bank on because they're the most accessible for people. They're in parts of the year where people either are taking some time off because one's around Thanksgiving, one's in the summer, and you can really observe them. In April, you get the Lyrids, but they're not the greatest because it's the middle of spring. There's stormy weather. It's hard to see. But one thing that Rod pointed out is really clear. You asked me my point.
I was singing to you.
One thing that is really important is that you really want to be in a dark place. The darker your skies, the better the chances are for what you can see for any of these meteor showers, because I have a street light right in front of my house, and it can cut down the number of meteors by at least half, if not more, just from the one street light, or from city lights as well. So getting out there in the country or a dark sky site, very, very good if you can do it, which is why the winter ones are great, because it's dark earlier, so you have more time to go out and do things. So.
That's true, although it's really not worth going out too far before midnight, because midnight is when the Earth rotates into its direction of orbit around the sun. Yes?
No, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Because we're basically impacting a gravel bank of what's left over from this comet orbit. Yeah, after midnight you turn into it, and they really accelerate. I will add.
Would you say that after midnight the universe lets it all hang out? That's another
no,
song.
I probably wouldn't
right?
say that.
That's a song, right?
Yeah, you can sing it to us. I would add, of the major fireballs and bolides I've seen, bolide's just a big fireball, have been the Perseids. And I did go up in the mountains where it used to be dark, the mountains north of San Gabriel Valley. It's not anymore. And depending where you live, you can look up, is it darksky.org, I think?
Darksky.org, it'll help you find some dark sky.
Yeah, help you find somewhere nearby. From the LA County, by the time I go north far enough for it to get dark, I'm basically picking up lights from Ventura. If I go northeast, by the time it gets dark, I'm picking up lights from Barstow and Las Vegas. If I go due east, by the time it gets really dark, I start getting into the big light cone from Phoenix. So the only place I can go here is way offshore, which is a great place to watch meteorites, but it's a bit of a commitment going out there.
I would point out that February and early March is fireball season. Also, according to NASA, when you get a lot of bolides and whatnot, we've actually seen a few of them in recent weeks too. But they're not something that you can plan on very much. It's just not uncommon to get fireball displays during that period.
Yeah. Okay. I think it's about time to wrap up. Let's have one more. I think we've done them all.
You don't want to do
56?
How do you yeah.
Okay. Rhonda Chang, how do you convince a moon landing denier that we actually did it? We've talked about this a bit on this show.
Punch him in the face if you're Buzz Aldrin, right?
No, Bart, he wasn't a denier. He was a stalker.
Yeah.
So Tarek's referring to Bart Seibel, who was a moon landing denier who stalked Buzz Aldrin, among others, incessantly. And actually, one time, I think it was in New York, Buzz was some kind of an event. And this guy is like getting in his face, blocking his way into this building, saying, "Will you swear on a Bible that you never went to blah, blah, blah?" And Buzz, to his credit, said no comment and kept turning away and trying to get around this guy. And Cyber was being a dick, and I think he reached out and touched him. And finally, Buzz hauled off and punched him in the face. And most people in the space community went, "Yeah, good on you." But Bart's an exception. But there is a large percentage of the population globally and in the U.S., sadly, that think it didn't happen. And this got worse in the social media era when people like Joe Rogan and Steph Curry, boy, those are two people whose intellect you want to respect for scientific accuracy. Although Rogan's smart, he's just not my cup of tea. But said, I don't think it happened. And I'm summarizing there. It was a lot more complex than that with Rogan. But, how do you talk? I shouldn't say talk sense. That's judgmental. If you're going to try and convince these people, how do you do it? Well, on the one hand, sometimes it's not worth it because people get a lot of personal, what's the word I'm looking for? They get like affirmation for being a denier, because you don't have to go get a PhD in astronomy or planetary science or orbital dynamics to be smart in that. All you have to do is get on a couple of wacko websites and say, "Look, I'm an expert. We didn't go. How about them UFOs and lizard people underneath Los Angeles?" But, and again, this is a repeat from before, but because she asked, in the past, when I went on something like Coast to Coast AM with George Nuri, and people would ask this question, I'd say, talk to the moonwalkers as I have. See if you think they're lying. Look at NASA, almost 500,000 people working together on the Apollo program. You're telling me they all kept the big secret. Analyze the footage of the photographs that people keep calling out. There's reasons for all the things they ask about, like waving flags and so forth.
I was going to see the flag was waving, and there's no stars, Rod. There's no stars, and the flag is waving, and it's on the moon. What's going on?
Because the astronaut walked right next to it, charged with static electricity. It was a crappy little nylon flag. And so on and so on. Go to the museum, look at the Saturn V's, all that stuff. Now it's much simpler because after the fall of the Soviet Union, they said, yeah, we tracked everything you guys did. We used radar. We measured the Doppler of the spacecraft coming around the moon. We listened to all your radio transitions. Of course you went to the moon. And of course, in the 21st century, India, China, who is not our biggest fan, and others have photographed the Apollo landing sites in orbit. So something landed there, and something left footprints, and something left rover tracks. So it's kind of open and shut, but I'll just wrap up by saying if somebody really wants to be a moon denier, they're not going to believe that either because it's all Photoshop and a conspiracy.
I think our guest Mick West a few episodes back talked a little bit about that and about the state of where things are and how siloed off people are. So that's a good episode to go back and revisit, by the way.
Yeah, actually, that episode got a lot of good feedback. Well, Tarek.
Rod.
I want to thank everybody, and you, of course, partner, and John Ashley, our new man on the board, for joining us today for episode 150.
Sasquicentennial. We should have led with that at the start. We forgot.
I forgot. Our listener special edition. And thank you, listeners, for sending in your comments and questions. We love you to death. Never be shy about contacting us.
Send us more. We have episode 200 to plan for.
That's right. And thank you for our live viewers. We're tracking your comments as we can on Facebook Live, YouTube, Twitch, X, TikTok, LinkedIn, Kick, and of course on the Club Twit Discord. I think I said that even faster than Leo does. Wow. Tarek,
Yes.
Where can we find you answering more space questions these days?
Well, you can find me at space.com, Rod, and everybody, like always, this weekend I'm actually going to see all of the new space products that are going to come out for consumers at the Toy Fair in New York, as well as watching Firefly Aerospace land on the moon. So be sure to come back. We're going to have live video of that attempt. And then on Monday, we're going to watch Starship launch. We forgot to talk about Starship, but Starship Flight 8 launches on Monday. Yeah. And I guess we'll talk about that next episode. And then, of course, on the Twitter, X at Tarek J. Malik, also on Blue Sky, and on YouTube, as Rod likes to point out, at Spacetron Plays, where I found a telescope and a glowing moon globe in Fortnite in the new season, and you can find out all about it. So
they're just pixels. Okay. And of course, you can find me at places that actually matter, like rodpilebooks.com or at astromagazine.com. I'm just kidding. Space.com matters more than either of those. And you can find the National Space Society, which is my primary gig, at nss.org. Membership includes a full subscription of the print digital editions of Ad Astra Magazine, which I am the editor-in-chief of, with a much smaller circulation than you have. Please remember, you can always drop us a line at twit@twit.tv. That's, to get it right this time, twit@twit.tv. We welcome your comments, suggestions, ideas, and we answer all our emails. New episodes of this podcast published every Friday on your favorite podcaster, so make sure to subscribe, tell your friends, and give us reviews. We'll take 5 thumbs up or whatever you got. And don't forget, we're counting on you to join Club Twit, help keep us on the air, keep the electrons hot and happy, and you're helping out a good cause for all the shows that Twit does. Finally, you can follow the Twit Tech Podcast Network at Twit on Twitter/X and on Facebook and twit.tv on Instagram. Thank you, stream viewers and listeners. Thank you, everybody else. Thank you, Tarek, and thank you and welcome, John. We will see you all next week. Bye.